Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you why you need to be using saturation on your drums and your bass. Correctly using saturation on your drum patterns and your bass can add a whole new level of richness, vibrance, and professionality to your drums and bass patterns. And without it, your bass and drums just might sound flat and boring. And trust me, especially in drum and bass heavy genres like electronic dance music, pop, and hip-hop, drums and bass are the last things you ever want to be flat and boring. Right before we jump into the video, if you're just starting out with music production and you would like a deeper, more structured approach to learning music production, check out my music production bootcamp course at the top of the description below. Let's jump into the video. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do in this video is show you what saturation is actually doing to the sounds. And then I'm going to give you a few examples of where you should 100% start experimenting with saturation, because it just makes sounds bigger and better, specifically drums and bass, and you're going to see why in just a moment. The first thing I want to do is show you what saturation is actually doing to any sound. So if I take just a basic sine wave and I show you what it looks like in an EQ, we can see it's just a very basic, simple looking sound. But watch what happens when I take Logic's built-in overdrive plugin and I add some drive to it. I'm going to turn this down because it will get loud. It adds all of these are called harmonics. And I know harmonics is a fancy, exciting word and everything, but really what saturation is doing to sounds is it's just adding stuff to that sound where there is no stuff, making the sound bigger. Now, let's do the same experiment with a very popular saturation plugin. And this is like a saturation / super compressor plugin, but I like it for its saturation. And it's called Sausage Fattener. It's like $40. If I play our test tone, look at all of this stuff that is added to that test tone. Now you can only imagine what happens if we put a plugin like this on drums. Well, it's going to add some stuff to the emptiness of your drums. It's going to make your drums sound more fuller. It's going to make it sound like they're a little more glued together and they're all part of the same project. With bass, saturation just does some seriously cool stuff. Let's get into it. For this first example, I'm going to show you what happens when you add saturation to drums. Your saturation just makes drums bigger and better. Watch. So here's a simple drum loop. Nice simple drum loop, very stock out of the box sounds, and if you're a sample user like I am, saturation will make these sound a little bit more unique. So I'm going to grab my favorite saturation plugin of all time. It's called Fab Filter Saturn 2. It's one of the more pricey ones out there, but it does the most, so that's why I love this plugin. So I'm just going to spike this drive knob, and you're going to see what happens to the drums. What it really does is makes the kick punch a lot harder, and it kind of glues all the drums together. So if we turn this off versus on, you can hear it just sounds louder. You might be saying, well, Alex, they did just get louder. What's the point of the saturation if it's making them louder? Well, actually, if we bring up our loudness meter, before and after the saturation, so before the saturation, we're around 28, 29 LUFS. After the saturation, when it sounds louder, we're actually the same volume. So you can hear how much louder the drums sound, and they're technically not even louder. That means they're just bigger. They're sitting in the song, they're more powerful, and yeah, saturation is awesome. For this second example, we're going to take another drum loop and just show you how saturation takes this drum loop to the moon. I got a question from one of my students named Fran, who also goes by Dyson X. He said, Alex, I use the same exact drum samples as you in all your videos, but my drums sound flat and boring. Dyson X, it's because you ain't using saturation. So for this one, I was between two different saturation plugins, RC20, which is a very popular plugin, Very colorful, fun to use. And then my favorite saturation plugin, which is called Saturn 2 by Fab Filter. This one's like a $90 plugin. This one's $200. So let's go ahead and test the saturation sound with both of these plugins one at a time. So here's the drums on their own. Very wild drums, there's a lot going on. So anytime there's a lot going on, saturation can really stuff them up. Sometimes you can overstuff saturation though, and you don't want to do that. You always have to add saturation if it could use it, but not everything could use it. But in today's video, everything could use a little saturation. So if I play these drums and I just stuff the drive knob, let's see what happens. Now clearly that's a little much, but what I like to do is always see what the most amount of a plugin is capable of and then either work backwards or work all the way back and then start forward again. So and right there, it's barely noticeable, but I get a nice filled in effect, or especially around the harmonics of the kick, and I like that sound. And what good saturation plugins allow you to do is try different types of saturation algorithms. That one made the kick really, really heavy, a nice tape saturation. Let's go ahead and try some RC20 on this drum loop. I turned off Fab Filter, so we're gonna start from scratch, and I'm gonna take the distortion module of this saturation plugin, and we're gonna work it in. So here's the dry drum loop. Let's go ahead and stuff this up. That's just incredible. And so like what I could do now is just bounce in between both of these plugins. So that was Fab Filter Saturn. Here's RC20. RC20 is a little loud, so I have to just make up gain, turn it down a bit. I don't know. I kind of love both, but yeah, that's just insane. I can't believe how good these drums sound with a little bit of tender love and saturation. Let's go ahead, baby, to the next example. For example number 3, this one comes with a tip. Always know where your saturation plugins are. You don't need these big fancy saturation plugins to get this effect. They're nice because they do great things, but there is saturation plugins built in to almost every plugin nowadays. Every DAW has their own saturation plugins stock built in, but I'm going to show you what I mean by know where your saturation plugins are. I have this bass line that sounds like this. And for those of you who insist on watching my videos on flat laptop speakers or a phone, you can't even hear this bass right now. But after I saturate it, you're going to be able to hear it. This is the bass sound in this little house jingle that I was working on like 2 months ago, and I honestly forgot about because that's what I do with all of my projects.
If you still feel the same as I just called to make amends. But the stat.
It's a great bass line, but it's just a little thin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the plugin that I made it with, and that is Serum. XFER Serum, very popular synth. And here's what's cool about Serum. It has a saturation module built right in, but it's camouflaged behind a word we call distortion. Distortion and saturation almost go hand in hand. Saturation is just a type of distortion. But here's what we could do. We could pick tube, which is a type of saturation, as our saturating algorithm. In this list, there's a bunch of different types of saturation and distortions that you can throw on any sound you make with Serum. So what I'm going to do is crank this drive knob. See how fat that bass just got? That is amazing. What we could do is we could edit where on this sound I want to saturate. So down here, these numbers aren't there just to be numbers. These numbers are telling you where on that sound you're going to saturate. So around 172 hertz is what we're going to saturate up to. But I want to take this actually to like around 250 and then take the drive knob to Cranktown. Let's go. And so now, all the people who insist on watching my videos on phones instead of at their desk with nice studio monitor headphones that they could actually hear the music on, you guys can hear this bass too. For this final example, this is a great starting point for your experimentation with saturation and like distortion. And the best place to start with saturation is on the kick. The kick is one of the most important parts of any digitally produced song anyway, whether it's electronic dance music, pop, or hip hop. So I have a kick here, sounds like this. And if we take the saturator that's built into Ableton Live, like I said, always know where your saturation plugins are. What we could do is just stuff this drive knob with a few decibels. That's crazy, wait. Wow, that was awesome. You don't need that much though, even just a little bit. So like this is 0, but if we just stuff a couple decibels, every couple of decibels just gives a whole new character to the kick. You don't need out of the box non-unique samples anymore. You can just add a little bit of saturation to your samples and you get a whole new sample. There you go, guys. I hope you're able to take these tricks and add some serious magic to your music. If you would like to learn every component of music production, whether it's songwriting, arrangement, chords, melodies, mixing, and mastering, come join me in my music production bootcamp. My production bootcamp is not just a course that teaches you all of those things, but it's also an entire back-end mastermind group with over 1,000 students where you can receive unlimited track feedback on your music from me and the other students and ask me any music production question that you would like. If that sounds like something that interests you, go ahead and check out the link at the top of the description below, and I'll see you in there. And of course, as always, stay tuned for next video.